Nintendo is once again facing serious scrutiny, and this time it's over new labor complaints that have surfaced 3 years after the company reached a settlement over union busting allegations. For a brand that has spent decades cultivating an image of being warm, friendly, and family focused, stories like this hit especially hard because they directly conflict with what fans associate with Nintendo. This isn't just about business behind closed doors anymore. It's about values, accountability, and whether one of the most beloved companies in gaming is truly willing to evolve with the modern industry. Today, we're breaking down what these new complaints are, why they matter, how they connect to the past settlement, and what this means not only for Nintendo, but for the future of labor rights in the gaming industry as a whole. To understand why the situation is so significant, we need to go back to the original case from 3 years ago. In 2023, Nintendo reached a settlement with the National Labor Relations Board after being accused of illegally firing contract workers who were involved in union organizing efforts. These workers were part of a quality assurance testing team that had been hired through a staffing agency. The allegation was that Nintendo had effectively shut down their employment after learning about their union activities, which would be a violation of federal labor law. Nintendo denied any wrongdoing, but agreed to a settlement that included posting notices affirming workers' rights to organize and agreeing not to interfere with future labor activity. At the time, many people hoped this would represent a turning point, a moment where Nintendo would reflect, adjust its internal culture, and move forward with a stronger commitment to fair labor practices. Now, 3 years later, we're seeing new labor complaints being filed, and that's what makes the situation so troubling. These fresh allegations reportedly involve claims of retaliation, intimidation, and discouragement of union activity, echoing the same themes that defined the original controversy. While investigations are still ongoing and details are continuing to come out, the pattern that's forming is difficult to ignore. When the same types of complaints resurface after a supposed corrective settlement, it raises serious questions about whether meaningful change actually occurred or whether the settlement was treated more like a legal hurdle to clear rather than a moment for genuine reform. What's important to understand is that these complaints don't exist in a vacuum. Across the entire video game industry, workers are increasingly organizing, unionizing, and pushing back against long-standing issues like job insecurity, excessive crunch, lack of benefits for contractors, and limited protections against retaliation. Companies like Blizzard, Bethesda, and others have already seen successful union drives, marking a major shift in an industry that once seemed completely resistant to organized labor. Nintendo, however, has largely remained on the sidelines of this movement, and these repeated labor disputes make it appear increasingly out of step with where the industry is headed. For Nintendo, this is not just a legal problem, it is a reputational one. The company is built on trust and nostalgia. People grew up with Nintendo characters, consoles, and franchises. There is an emotional connection there that few other corporations enjoy, but modern audiences are far more aware of corporate behavior than ever before, and that emotional bond can weaken when fans feel like a company's actions don't match its image. Repeated labor complaints create the impression that Nintendo is resistant to change, and that perception can slowly chip away at even the strongest brand loyalty. There is also a financial and operational side to this. Labor complaints mean investigations, legal expenses, potential settlements, and increased regulatory oversight. Even when companies avoid massive fines, the cost of dealing with these issues adds up over time. More importantly, ongoing disputes can disrupt production pipelines, lower employee morale, and make it harder to attract new talent. In an industry that relies heavily on creative, motivated workers, maintaining a positive and a supportive work environment is not optional, it's essential. One of the most critical aspects of this situation is how it affects contract workers. Many of the allegations, both in the original case and in these new complaints, involve temporary or outsourced employees. Contractors often lack the protections, job security, and benefits that full time employees have, making them more vulnerable to retaliation or sudden termination. When companies depend heavily on contractors while failing to protect their rights, it creates a two-tier system where one group has stability and another lives in constant uncertainty. That imbalance is one of the primary drivers behind unionization efforts in tech and gaming, and it's a major reason these disputes keep happening. What makes all of this especially frustrating is that Nintendo had a real opportunity to change course after the 2023 settlement. They could have implemented stronger protections, improved transparency, built better relationships with workers, and clearly demonstrated that they respected employees' rights to organize. The fact that new complaints are emerging suggests that any changes made were either superficial, inconsistently applied, or simply not enforced in a meaningful way. That doesn't just look like a missed opportunity, it looks like a systemic issue that hasn't been addressed at its core. For gamers, this creates an uncomfortable conversation. How do we reconcile our love for Nintendo's games with concern about how the company treats its workers? There is no single right answer. Some people choose to support workers over advocacy groups, others speak out online, some boycott, and some simply stay informed. What matters is that these conversations are happening because silence is what allows harmful practices to continue unchecked. Awareness creates pressure, and pressure is often what drives real change in large corporations. If Nintendo truly wants to move forward and repair the growing damage to its reputation, it needs to go beyond legal compliance and settlements. It needs to actively demonstrate that it respects labor rights, supports fair organizing, and values the people who create the games that make the company so successful. That means stronger protections for contractors, clearer policies against retaliation, and a cultural shift that treats workers as partners rather than liabilities. Without that, each new complaint only reinforces the idea that this isn't about isolated incidents, but about a pattern that refuses to disappear. Right now, the narrative is becoming increasingly difficult for Nintendo to escape. 3 years after a settlement that was supposed to put union busting allegations behind them, the company is once again facing similar accusations. That doesn't look like a coincidence, it looks like unfinished business. And until meaningful change happens, this story is likely to keep repeating itself, damaging trust and putting Nintendo's carefully built image at risk. If you enjoyed this video and found it informative, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads. Your support helps the channel grow and allows me to keep covering important stories like this that impact the gaming industry and the people who work in it. Also, consider checking out my Patreon, where you can support the channel directly and get access to exclusive content. Right now, the latest exclusive video is about One Game Wonders That Never Got a Sequel, a deep dive into those unique titles that deserved a second chance but never got one. Your support there makes a huge difference and helps keep this content going. Until next time, game on.